skills gap is a zombie idea that should have been killed by evidence, but refuses to die. Okay, that's fair. I think dissent is important. I think understanding and respecting different viewpoints is important. So let's look at this from the perspective of the world that we're in, that we care about. Since we're at Ohio Inbound Marketing Day, we care about digital skills. We want to make sure that both our businesses and our employees, and if we're students, if we're educators, that we're prepared for the way that the world is changing. So let's look at whether in the world of digital, there is a skills gap. And there are three things that I would look at to get a better picture if that was the case. Well, the first is what the economy said. And so a study showed that 38% higher hourly wages in occupations that require one or more advanced digital skills. Okay, so the economy says that people get paid more for having these skills. That's a pretty good sign. In a study done by Boston Consulting Group and Google, they asked 1,000 individuals and the businesses that they represent, 0 to 100, 100 being best practice, how would you rank your skill set in digital marketing? Here's my laser pointer. It's hard to read right there, but most people put themselves at about a 55. So the economy says we need these skills, and we're willing to pay for them. We're willing to pay a premium for them. Ask the people who are doing those things right now, and they say, we're okay. We're not great, but we're okay, and we're working on it. And so the economy and the individuals say this is important, we're only okay at it. And then you ask the businesses. There's a study done by the Online Marketing Institute. And that right there is where they feel their team is at on important skills. We're talking analytics, we're talking SEO, we're talking content marketing. And here's where they rank the importance. And so there's a serious divide between where the businesses want their employees to be and where they actually are. So my question to the crowd is, what the heck is going on? No, seriously, it's you. Does anyone have an idea? Raise your hand. Does anyone even just have an idea, a theory? What's going on? Yeah?
The schools haven't progressed the same way that companies have progressed. Some of the same things that were taught a long time ago. So kids are thinking that they're graduating. So students are thinking that they're graduating with the skills ready for the workforce. And in fact, the workforce has evolved beyond the education.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a part of it, but I don't think it's fair to lay the blame just on the schools. Last chart showed that businesses aren't building the people that they're looking for, even when they're in there. So yes, I agree, that's part of it. Saw another guy back there, yeah.
Probably depends on the hiring managers and the expectations, like how defined are those roles at the organizations? Do they even know what they're looking for? Are the right people looking for the talent? Are they vetting the talent appropriately? Maybe not.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's how lost are the businesses on what are the skills they actually need to take it to the next level. One more, if anyone. I think I saw one more hand. Yeah?
I was just going to say that basically the businesses may not be providing the continuing education that the employees need to continue to improve those skills. It's not just recent grads, it's all the way through.
I mean, I think you guys nailed it. Maybe I'm done with my presentation. But those were three, I think, really important examples, and I like that you mentioned individuals, the businesses, the importance of lifelong learning. We're going to talk about all of those topics today, but this is a really complex issue. I'm not up here as a snake oil salesman to say that I have the answer for how to fix this skills gap, but I think if you ask people in academia, if you ask businesses, if you ask individuals, they would all acknowledge that at least in the realm of digital marketing, this is real. Digital marketing, digital sales, being a properly digital business. So the way that we live has changed. I think this is the first thing that is really apparent. And a lot of it goes to the presentations that we've already talked about today, right? So it used to be text-dominated input, but now it's video. And we went from browsers being our main apps to apps being our main apps, to now chat being our main app. That's alarmingly fast that these things are happening. Ads, ad blocker comes of age. I think it's 500 million people across their browser and on mobile who are using ad blocker. We've got Netflix. The world of SEO, where previously you searched for something and you got 8 answers. Well, if you're using voice search, you're only going to get 1 answer. What does that do to the way that we market, to the way that we sell? It's pretty fast change. One of the things that was mentioned, employees are not getting the training that they need. It's not just on the schools, right? You have to become a lifelong learner. But part of being a lifelong learner is being in an institution, a company that puts learning and development first and a priority. And so you can't see what any of these are, but they talk about training programs, they talk about making resources available. These are the different industries, and all you need to know is that this is a sea of yellow and red. It's the same Boston Consulting Group survey with Google that asked not only the individuals, but the businesses, how prepared are you to help people tackle the problems that are troubling businesses today? And it turns out businesses admit they're not very good at training people either. I think another big trend is from generalization to specialization. A survey by the Online Marketing Institute asked businesses, what are you looking for more, specialists or generalists? 22% looking for more specialists, 10% looking about their need for generalists. We'll talk about how to think about that. That can be a false dichotomy sometimes. I know Nate's going to tackle that in a big way during his presentation, but I think that's another trend that we're seeing that can make it hard to actually figure out where do we want to focus? Where do we want to learn? Where do we want to train? And so if inbound is about matching the way that you market and sell with the way that people live, shop, and buy, I would argue it's pretty darn hard to do that if you can't actually get a hold of how to communicate with people as those methods change. And so I think there's a tremendous amount of importance and effort that deserves to go into this. If you want to be a truly inbound business, you have to understand the way the world is changing, the way how people live is changing. You need to market and sell in that way. And there are tremendous opportunities here. The businesses that get it right, they're scaling faster and they're scaling farther. So I want to use e-commerce as an example. I know that the people in the room here are not multi-billion-dollar businesses. I don't give this as an example to say that this is exclusionary and this is the only way it can happen, but I think it is a prime example of how businesses who get this right can be really, really successful. So you can't totally see this, but this is the number of retailers, internet retailers, that went from 0 to $100 million in 5 years or less. Does anyone have a guess how long it took Nike to go from 0 to 100 million? If you can see it on there, you can tell me. But it was 14 years. It took Nike 14 years. Lululemon, 9 years. Under Armour, 8 years. Now with this select group that you see right here, we've got a business that took 1.5 years to go from 0 to 100 million. The average being about 4 from this cohort. And so when you've got a business that can understand how things go viral and they put that into their plan, when you have all of the confluence of these different things coming together, businesses can go very quickly, and they have an outsized opportunity to do that if they can align the way that people live with the way that they market and sell. And so, how do you overcome this digital skills gap? How do you build a company? How do you as an individual manage a career? How do you as an academic institution create people who can navigate this digital skills gap, who can overcome this digital skills gap? I think there are 3 concrete things that you can do. The first is to become a lifelong learner. The second is to develop a T-shape. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's your structure. It's not any good just to be a lifelong learner from a career perspective or from a business perspective unless you're actually learning about the right things. So I think the T shape will give people some guidance and some context to think about, well, what are those things? And then lastly, measure your efforts. I think that's the magical thing about doing marketing, doing sales, being a digital business, being an inbound business, is that you have access to information and accountability that maybe you didn't have beforehand. And so this loop right here, being passionate about learning, creating and providing opportunities to learn, learning about the right things and then measuring those efforts, that's a recipe for success. And so when it comes to being a lifelong learner, I'm curious to hear from you folks, what is something new that you're learning about right now? Anyone? What's something new that you've tasked yourself to learn right now?
Inbound marketing.
Inbound marketing. Love it. How are you doing it? I mean, besides being here, of course.
A lot of research.
Yep.
HubSpot University.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to colleagues who are farther down the line than I am in this.
So you build your own little community of folks who care about similar things. You research, you try. What else? What are people trying to learn right now? Yeah.
How to be a better manager and represent my team and allow them to fulfill goals.
Love it. Love it. How are you learning?
Reading as much as I can, taking recommendations from people who have the advocacy tools, and that is your practice.
It's awesome. It's awesome. What else? One more.
We've got a big VR initiative coming up well, we want to teach it to clients, and we realize that if we're going to teach it to clients, we better know well ourselves.
Yeah.
So with our swimming pool company, the 2017 motto is, we want our customers to swim in the pool before they swim in the pool.
Cool.
And so that's like the message that everybody in the office is grabbing onto right now. My videographer at River Pools has been sending me at least 2 or 3 pieces of VR content a week since he caught the vision. At first he was really intimidated by it, and then he's like, I have a chance to do something that nobody in the world has done yet, which is really, really cool. And so we're in the process now of getting ready to buy the equipment and that whole jam. Very exciting though.
It is, but as a business, you have to make a commitment to allowing one of your employees to take a bet on this, to stumble, to learn, to explore. So
yeah, we're going to lose at least $10,000 before it works. I mean, that's just going to happen. I figured that out. When we first, we did widescreen videos, Infinity White videos last year the first time. And I told George one day, I was like, George, those Infinity White videos that you see people doing are awesome. Let's do them ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty much the directions I gave George, and of course he had to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And so he's amazing. We figured it out, but we did a whole day of shoots of doing it wrong before we did it right. We got a set of lights that didn't work before we got the lights that did work. I mean, that's how it went for us, but now we've got we've got dozens of really, really professional Infinity White background videos on the internet today because we took the time to fall forward.
Yeah. I think that highlights a great point, which is that we all have something to learn, whether it's as a business, whether it's as an owner, whether it's an employee, a manager. We all have things that we are striving to understand, and nobody has all the answers. And so this mentality of being a lifelong learner is going to serve us really well through that discovery process, the ability to follow forward. I love Marcus's point on that. And to underpin this, I want to look at a couple things that make this not just a luxury, but an imperative. And so when you look at how channels rise and fall over time, I love this because it shows how email rises and then it falls. MySpace falling off a cliff. Twitter rising higher, right? Then you can see the rate and pace of acceleration expand and rise at a crazy, crazy rate as Product Hunt gets acquired by AngelList and transforms the way that people launch entire businesses, as chat comes on the scene. And so the channels change, but you gotta wonder, well, what about the underlying principles behind those channels? What about inbound? What about how people consume, how they connect? Okay, well, the channels are changing. So maybe it becomes an imperative to understand those new channels, to try, to be willing to fail, but also to assess. I like to share the example of a business that I was working with that sells government contracts. And I was talking to one of their social media people. I said, well, that's interesting that you're on Snapchat. How many people do you think are exploring Snapchat before they purchase government contracts? Not so many. None. So you have to be careful, right? Just because something's new and shiny doesn't mean that it aligns with your persona. And I think that will alleviate that feeling that some of you might be having, which is like, oh my God, what am I doing sitting here when I have all of this stuff to figure out? And that's okay, right? We don't have to chase all of those things, but it means that we could be paying attention to them. And so channels change, and technology changes. So this is what our home screen looks like right now. What about when messaging apps become the second home screen? And now you can buy things through Facebook Messenger, and order an Uber through Facebook Messenger, and you can split the bill through Facebook Messenger. Okay, well that's very interesting too. Channels are changing, and new channels within them are redefining entire ways that people interface with the world. Quickly. And through that, mediums change too. I love that I got to go after we talked about video, but watch how quickly this accelerates. Where traditionally, right up until on-demand came, for 70 years, all you have is live linear television. And the inventory is essentially just what you can see on TV. Then you have Netflix on demand, and you can watch anything you want. Okay, well then you have semi-live with Snapchat Stories, and now we've got real live. If anyone follows George on Facebook, you'll know Facebook Live is alive and well, and that it can be incredibly powerful. Right, but that's the evolution of one medium, which we actually just discussed in great depth. But that's an example of how channels, technology, and mediums come together to transform the way that people consume information, therefore the way that we live. It would make sense that the way that we market and sell should align with that. That's tough. And so the first thing is to figure out and adopt that mentality of being a lifelong learner. And then the next thing is develop a T-shape. And so for folks who know what the T-shape is, you'll understand that maybe this is a bit of a trick question. But is it better to be a generalist or a specialist? Now I actually feel this is a fair discussion, it's a fair argument. If you're in a startup, if you're lean and mean, if you only have a couple employees, maybe it does make sense to have quite a few generalists. People who can wear a bunch of different hats. People who understand customer acquisition, but can also support those customers. Maybe as you get a little bit bigger, it makes sense to have some specialists. But as your business grows, as your career grows, you have the opportunity to compound knowledge and learn more. And so the question becomes, if you're only in school until you're in your 20s, maybe your late 20s if you go to grad school, maybe you go back. But the majority of your life as it stretches out in front of you isn't actually spent in the classroom. You have this lifelong learning, but how do you begin to direct it? How do you put that into a framework that helps you build a better model of the way that the world works and the way that your business might grow, the way that your career might grow? And so this was something that made the rounds on the internet, and I loved it. It's a concept called T-shape. And what it says here is you've got a wide breadth of basic knowledge across many different disciplines across the top. And so if you're a web marketer, maybe you have email, PPC, display, video, across. And this is your baseline, right? This is your context and your framework for understanding the world. And then within one of these, let's say it's SEO and social, you have deep knowledge and experience and ability in one or a few of these fields. Nate's going to go into much more depth about what this means to actually develop and become a T-shaped person in the next section. And I actually think this is a pretty good start. But there's a guy, Brian Balfour, who used to work at HubSpot. He helped build our entire sales program. He is a customer acquisition specialist. And now, Rand's example is exceptional. But there's one thing that you can't read here, but this is your base knowledge layer. And so previously, in the last thing, we dove right into email and PPC and display and video. Those are valuable and those are essential, and you can't be successful without them. But what I love that Brian did is even deeper than that. He has statistics and programming and behavioral psychology. These are well-worn mental models for the way that the world works, right? Economics, political science. There's a reason that these have become pillars, areas of study, things that we teach people, because they are models for the way that the world works. You can plug something in and get a reasonably accurate definition of what's supposed to happen. And so people like to throw around a lot of terms like conversion rate optimization. Okay, well, to be really good at conversion rate optimization, you should probably understand behavioral psychology, right? You should understand incentives. You should understand user experience. And so it's very easy to chase what's the new thing. Okay, there are going to be a lot of ebooks, there are going to be a lot of guides that come out around that. But regardless of the platform, regardless of the channel, regardless of the technology, there are some things that you'd want to develop, some ways that the world works that you want to understand. And so I love this model because it gets deeper than that, right? And it makes sure that you can go deep because you have a baseline of understanding some of those core principles. So when you sit there and say, oh my God, it's so scary to think about how rapidly video is changing and how could I ever do this? Well, what are those underlying things below that that are going to allow you to ride that wave? Maybe you don't have to be on the bleeding edge of it, but you can understand what's going on. And then lastly, being able to measure your efforts. This is a quote that comes up in every single conversation ever about the history of marketing, right? Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. That's the way that marketing worked for years and years and years. And the advent of technology is that this is no longer the case. It doesn't have to be, right? You can now track people as they move through their path to purchase. And I don't mean that in a creepy NSA way. I mean that in you can now provide a relevant and contextual and meaningful and integrated, whatever other buzzwords you want to put in there, experience for people as they travel through the world and what your business can do for them, how it can help them, and how it can position themselves and position your business as something that will add value to their life and be meaningful. And businesses recognize that. 53% of organizations chose data-driven marketing as their top priority for 2016. I can use that slide for about 3 more weeks, and then they'll have to put a new study up. But businesses recognize that this, and that was more than any other priority in that survey. But what's so fascinating is that every single business is putting this as their priority. And then when you ask, well, go back to that with the skills gap, what's the biggest gap between the skills that businesses need and what people have? Analytics. Okay, so you've got your own mental model, your own T-shape, your own passion for lifelong learning, and then you pick your head up and you say, well, everyone wants a better grip on all this data that's coming into play. Understanding how to navigate that, how to use it, how to make smarter decisions with it, that would probably be a pretty good place to start. And so being able to measure that feedback loop. What does that look like in action? Let's use the example we talked about, conversion rate optimization. So you've got X number of people coming to your website, you've got X number of people who fill out your contact us form. And you might say, I want more people to fill out our contact us form. Great, for my ebook. or click on my email. This process of attracting, converting, and closing people happens all the time. It's a lot of what our businesses do, business to business. Even if you're business to consumer, it's just a truncated version of that. Now let's see what that looks like, conversion rate optimization. You find a weak point in your funnel, you figure out what's causing the funnel to narrow, you put your head down, you think of a good solution, apply it in a controlled test environment, record, analyze, come to a conclusion. Does that remind anybody of anything they learned in 6th grade? It's the scientific method. Right. This doesn't have to be scary. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is taking a scientific, methodical approach to the way that you grow, scale, measure, and implement any initiative that you're doing. This doesn't have to be so scary. You make an assumption. Maybe it's about a new channel that you want to try. Maybe it's refining something that you're already doing. And you give it a shot, and then you measure it, and you try again. You've never had more data. You've never had more information. That's exciting. It's not scary. It's exciting. It's great. And so, what can you do to close this digital